Oh my!
Uh-oh.
Neat.
Hello, everybody.
Hey there.
Snake, you are a competitor. You must be silent. You have no power. I am your god. You understand? All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Debate Cafe. We are going to be having quite an interesting debate, and I am extremely excited to see this. And the topic is going to be on the objectivity of morality, whether or not there is an objective morality or not. We have our competitor, Snake Was Right, who's pretending to be Taylor Gray for some reason. Not sure why. And we have Godless Girl, and Snake is going to be arguing for objective morality, and Godless Girl will be arguing against. We're going to be doing mostly an open discussion, 45 minutes, and we will be scoring. With that being said, I would like to invite our competitors to do introductions with our guest, Godless Girl. Please introduce yourself.
I'm an atheist YouTuber, debater. I've been around the community for a while. And tonight metaethics isn't my strong area, so I don't know if I'm gonna win. Usually I win my debates, but I don't know if I'm gonna be winning this one. I don't even have like an opening statement or anything, so we'll see.
All right. And we all know Snake was right, but do you want to introduce yourself again anyways?
Yes. Formerly known as Taylor. And yeah. We started this channel together for mainly debates. My old channel, I do a lot of debates, mostly anti-theist content, but also anti-communism, stuff like that. Some politics, but mostly a lot of skepticism. Recently got into streaming games. So yeah.
All right, very exciting. So, can you reiterate the exact terminology of the motion that we are debating?
Moral facts exist, or moral realism is true.
Okay, so then you would be on the government side then.
Yeah.
Great. All right, so without any further ado, why don't we just get started? We'll allow each competitor a maximum of 5 minutes to introduce their case. And after that, 45 minutes of open discussion. All right, ready, set, go.
Okay, so I take the position that moral facts exist and that moral realism is true. And so basically, what morality is there's a couple of different theories on morality. I think both of them could be called objective. I think the weaker case would be a set of rules that allows people in a society to coexist, and there are objective facts on which rules allow people to coexist and which don't. But I think the stronger case, the more transcendental or whatever case, and because I'm an atheist, I think Godless and I would agree on the Euthyphro dilemma, and gods can't make something good. But if something is good, what does that even mean? And so I have tried to be very careful not to equivocate any definitions about the usage of good that I'm going to be using here. So good basically means what something is good for, which is essentially what it does. So, for as an example, you could ask, so if something is good for me, for example, um, something might be good for me. It might not be morally good. But what does it mean that something is good for me? It essentially what it does is allows me to function, and it increases the functional capabilities of myself. So anything that's good for me is doing that. And the kind of the short term I use for that would be freedom. We don't have to necessarily use that word. So anything that's good increases the amount of freedom for that thing that it's good for. But who cares what's good for me? What we're talking about is objective morality. So essentially, what is good on a universal scale? So that same definition and usage would be applied to the universe and say, so what if something is good? It's increasing or maintaining the amount of capability or freedom of the universe. And so this basically any usage of the word good can be substituted for the way I'm using it, and it still makes sense. So the other thing I'll throw out there is morality. So good and bad are different from morality. There's good and bad, which I've described here, and there's morality, which is moral agents choosing good over bad, or they have awareness of good and bad, and they create good or bad. So yeah, I think we could probably just start off the discussion there.
Okay, I don't really have an opening statement. I understand everything you said at the end. I'll just say my position is I'm a moral non-cognitivist, so I don't think that moral propositions are even true or false because they're just people's preferences. But what you said at the end about how you define good, I didn't understand. My understanding of like a moral proposition is that it's what you ought do. When something is good, you morally good, you ought do it, and morally bad, you ought not do it. One of the problems I would have with what you're saying is, you said like what benefits a society or something like that is what's good. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you would need an argument that benefiting a society is what we ought to do. And you can't get an ought from an is. So it doesn't matter what you're describing about the world. You can't get from that we ought to do something because the world is a certain way. It's a fallacy.
All right. So I completely disagree that you can't get an ought from an is, and the reason is because all ought statements are is statements. So when I came to this conclusion because I didn't know if someone asked me how to define an ought, I wouldn't know how to define it, and the best I could come up with is if you're saying you ought to do something, what this is a statement that that thing is the correct thing to do. And so if we
Isn't
have
that's an ought, you said?
yeah. So if you say
Yeah, but
you
what does
ought
that
to do
mean?
good, that means that's the correct thing to do, or the good thing to do. If you ought to brush your teeth, that's going to increase the good, and that means that it's correct
What's
that
the good?
brushing your teeth is good for you. Sorry.
What's the good mean?
Uh, the way I'm defining it is good is whatever increases or maintains the freedom of the system, or in other words, the function of the system.
Like the function of society, do you mean?
Of any system, of an individual, of a society,
Okay, but
or the entire universe.
what makes functioning systems good? So when you say when you make a moral claim, is it prescriptive or descriptive?
I suppose it's both.
That seems like a contradiction to me.
So it's definitely descriptive in that. So I'm trying to bridge the gap between those. It's descriptive in that it is true that certain actions will increase or decrease the functions of any system, and that is what we use the term good to mean.
But why
So
ought we increase the function of a system?
why ought we?
Yeah, isn't that just going to be like when you turn that into an ought? I don't see how you're doing that without fallacious reasoning.
Well, it's the statement you ought to do something means that it is good to do it.
So it sounds like it's not going to be informative if you just say what we ought do is good and what is good is what we ought do. You have to like get a definition in there. It's
Yeah,
like
well, we have the definition of good. So
it's like this inner circle of I don't know how to articulate it.
yeah, I don't think it's circular
Like
reasoning because
no, I wasn't saying circular reasoning,
okay.
but like I don't see how saying we like increasing the function of a system is not just a preference. Sounds like a preference. Like
Well,
I
you
could
can
come
have
along and say I think that what's good is to decrease the function of a system.
well, well, it doesn't matter what you think. It just matters. So we have to have a definition, obviously, for what we're talking about. So what the term good describes is just that it's increasing the freedom of the system. So um,
I guess you'll have to give an
it doesn't
example.
matter what label we use, that phenomenon exists. And you don't have to prefer it. You could prefer the opposite. It doesn't matter. But that phenomenon can be described as existing.
And the if you're just giving descriptive statements about what would increase the function of a system, that's not going to have like be a moral claim though. It's not a moral claim, it's just a descriptive claim.
But so what does an ought mean? Like when you say you ought to do something, what does that mean to you?
Well, it's prescriptive, and I'm not sure what people mean exactly when they say, because it seems to me that they're just expressing their preferences, but it's just, I guess, saying that your actions should be in accord with that thing.
So like when we say a clock ought to tell time, to me that's just a description of what the clock does. It ought to tell time because that's what it is.
Yeah, that's
And if
fine, but then that has nothing to do with morality.
yeah, so when we're talking about moral facts, one ought to do good because that is what the ought statement means, is it's good to do X. So that's just the definition of it.
I don't think that you can
Like there's
say
nothing even derived from it. It's just
a clock ought to tell time. Like the function of a clock is to tell time. That doesn't mean that you can make the prescriptive claim that it ought to.
but what is it? What is a prescriptive claim? Like, I guess maybe we could agree that a prescription doesn't actually exist. It's just kind of a desire.
I'm sorry. Hey, hang on a second. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Gives me time to think and set up the soundboard.
Sorry.
Cinnamon brought the twins.
Sorry, my boyfriend was talking to me.
Okay. So, yeah, I think we could probably agree that like preferential oughts don't actually exist. It's just like a desire. But in the sense that I'm using ought, which I've given examples for, like you ought to brush your teeth. What does that mean? It's not. It just means that it's good for you.
Um, well, whether or not brushing your teeth is good for you, for one thing, is going to be relative. So, what if somebody has values not brushing their teeth? Like, what are you going to say to that? What if they think it increases their well-being when they don't, because they think their
Well, they
time is
could be wrong.
or something?
Some people do stuff which is bad for their health. Like, so would you agree that it's
What if
meaningful
it's
to
somebody
say,
that's like, there's going to be cases though where like, what if somebody's like terminally ill and they all have a few months to live, and it's like they want to spend their time doing things that they value rather than brushing their teeth? Like, it doesn't matter if they don't brush their teeth; they're about to die.
yeah, well, at that point, like the return of brushing your teeth isn't going to matter. So it's not actually, so it's outweighed by the
So there's
increases.
going to be cases with gray areas, right?
I wouldn't say gray, but
Well, what
it's
if you
not,
have a year
it's
to
not
live?
absolute.
Your teeth in?
Like, I'm not saying that it's always the case that brushing your teeth is just good, because brushing your teeth is the definition of good. Um, it's just whatever ends up increasing the most amount of freedom is, or function, is essentially what's going to be good. And in one set of circumstances, it could be brushing your teeth. In another set, maybe you're running late, you don't have time, and you're going to lose your job if you're late. So you shouldn't brush your teeth, because that's going to be bad for your overall system.
Maybe it's
So
just more of a semantic disagreement then between us about what morality, like, is defined as. But
yeah, and
like, say
it
we
might
met,
be.
what if we came across like a group of beings on another planet, and that they have, it's because it sounds like this inner circle thing to me. So like, they, not circular reasoning, but, and they were saying, X is Zud, and because it seems like it's
Yeah.
tautological to say that the good is what makes the system function, and that the good is what we ought to do, and it's just, I don't know, system function. But like a group of say beings on another planet. Sorry, I didn't articulate that well. A group of beings on another planet that's just saying like X is Zud and we zot do X, and X is Zeit. What is that? I wouldn't know whether they're talking about prescriptive or descriptive claims, I guess.
Well, whatever word they happen to use, if it's describing the increase or maintenance of the function of something, then we're talking about the same thing.
So who are you to say that the increasing the functioning of a system is good?
That's the definition of good.
Whose definition? That's not like the definition
The
in
English definition.
philosophy. It's in like the dictionary definition.
And not in those words, but you can do the test yourself, where any usage of the word good, what I've described, it will make the same statement. So when something's good for your car, then what it's doing is preserving or increasing its functions.
So if you were trying to make a system malfunction that, say, was like a torture chamber, like you'd no longer wanted people to be tortured, so you were trying to make the torture chamber system malfunction, you would be doing something bad by saving the people that were being tortured.
You'd be doing something bad to the torture device, but to the universe, you're doing something good.
What does that mean to the universe?
So the existence of a torture device doesn't increase the universe's overall function, but the existence of untortured people does.
I don't understand how that follows. Maybe you're torturing them to get them to like work more or something, to increase
Well,
the. What if you're torturing them with the purpose of getting them to make the work on making the function of other systems increase.
So there might be some case where that's necessary, but that it's been empirically shown many times that slave labor or coerced labor is much less efficient than free labor. There's also the ethics angle where,
well, that's going to be an empirical claim, but then it also seems like
yeah.
what's good is going to change over time.
Well, specific instances might be different situationally, but the standard is always whatever increases freedom.
Wait, what? How are you bringing freedom into this now? If it's what I thought the good is what increases the function of a system.
So I'm using them interchangeably.
But there's cases where freedom would have the opposite effect. So like in a slave society.
Well,
So
I would say
we released all the slaves from bondage in the South, like the cotton production system fell apart, right?
Yeah, but it was eventually replaced because the
that's
system
not relevant.
was free
That's
to pivot.
That's irrelevant, though.
Well, not if you're looking.
You can't
if you're
define. It's
using
not the same
definition.
thing. To increase the function of a system and have freedom is not the same thing. There can be cases where they actually contradict each other.
Well, I would say it's not temporally locked to a certain moment in time. So, like, you would be giving up. So, like, just basic hygiene. You're giving up your freedom in the moment for a greater return of freedom in the future. And
sorry,
that's
can you repeat that?
Something just like basic hygiene, or I guess abolishing slavery. You're giving up. Let's just go with basic hygiene for now. You're giving up your freedom in the moment to, like, wash your body, brush your teeth, and something you might not want to do, which doesn't really serve any meaningful purpose other than just the daily grind. So you're giving up your freedom in the moment in order for a greater return in the future, because your overall quality of life will be better.
I don't understand what system is brushing your teeth increasing the function of?
Well, that it would be an individual, but a society full of individuals.
An individual you're using synonymous as with a system?
Yeah, any system, which would be, so you could have an individual, a society, the universe, a household.
Yeah, I don't know what it means for an individual to be a system. I'm just not following.
Maybe it's the like the STEM in me, but so I use the word system. It's just means whatever you're talking about. So any individual thing is a system.
Any like a chair is a system?
Yeah. And then, so if you're just considering the chair as a system, we're going to say, okay, what's good for the chair?
You said you're anti-communist, right? So communism is a system,
Yeah.
right?
In a different sense, but so if you had a particular government, like the Chinese Communist government is a system in the sense that I'm using it.
Right. So if we say we overthrow the Chinese government, we're doing something that's not good because we're not increasing the function of that system.
It's bad for that system, but it's good for the Chinese people or for the whole earth.
No, because your definition of good is to increase the function of a system. So if you're decreasing the function of the communist government, then that's not good by definition.
That's bad for the communist government. That's bad for that system. But if we take the system not to be the Chinese government, but to be the whole world, then decreasing the amount of communism is going to increase the amount of freedom of the world.
I guess I'm just not following.
So if you imprison a serial killer you're taking away his freedom, but you're increasing the freedom of everyone of his potential victims, right?
How is victimizing people taking away the function of a system?
So if you impose your will on somebody, that's decreasing their freedom.
Yeah, I guess I'm not understanding how you. It seems you're changing the definition. You're switching back and forth between the freedom and the functioning of a system.
I just use freedom because it's a shorthand. So
Shorthand for what?
if someone is like imprisoning you in their basement, then the function of that system, which is the person the victim, is decreased because they're stuck in a basement. They can't do all the normal things that they would normally do. So
But okay, so say like we a ton of people just have one slave, and that
mhm.
helps increase their day the function of their daily lives and their systems, whatever the jobs they have or whatever, to have this. So like would the um functioning of all their systems like outweigh the importance of this individual?
If it was necessary, but so there's another layer that we talked about, which is the ethical layer, which is kind of a little bit like what the rules are for societies to get along. So a society that has the rule, you can enslave some people sometimes if it's convenient. That society will fall apart. And so those rules are self-contradictory, and
That's
I think
that's
we
an
can
empirical
agree
that
contradictions are incorrect.
that it would fall apart. It inevitably will fall apart is like an empirical claim that I wouldn't know how you were going to justify.
So I think you could empirically show that societies that have individual rights as rules overall have a greater function than societies that don't,
Greater function.
or freedom.
Like
And
look at us, look at our prison population. Do we have like individual rights in the United States, right? Laws with
mhm,
individual rights in the United States, and look at our
supposedly,
prison
in
population.
theory, yeah. Sorry, what was that?
Look at our prison population. It's like a nation inside a nation. It's so large.
Yeah.
And then like look over at people at the Amazon who have no laws, just walking around freely, which is your definition of the good, right? Is to walk
Hmm.
around freely. They're walking around freely in the Amazon and with no laws, and their system, like their way of life seems to be functioning pretty efficiently. They don't
Um,
have
I
people in prisons.
I don't know if they have slavery in the Amazons
They
or
don't.
okay.
They
So
don't have
they're
laws.
well, it doesn't have to be a law. It could be, um, just an anarchist kind of agreement where everyone just knows the rules that we don't enslave each other. There might not be any enforcement, but it's still a rule that they follow. And
Well,
that
what if
that
they didn't? What if they just chose to enslave just one person to increase the function of their system?
I don't think that would be sustainable.
Enslaving
And
one person one time?
yeah,
Why?
and I
What,
guess the
escape or
evidence
something?
I would use for that is we've never seen that happen ever.
That's not evidence that it couldn't happen.
I guess there might be isolated cases of that, but not whole societies. So
That's not evidence that it isn't sustainable, though.
it's well, it is evidence that it's not sustainable because if it was sustainable, then it probably would exist.
What's the argument for that?
If well, pretty much people live in lots of different ways. People have lived in slave societies, so why wouldn't we see the kind of society that you're describing, if it was sustainable, then surely someone would have tried it and it would have perpetuated.
It's what, it's enslaving a single person.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you would claim that that's never happened. There's been so many like societies broken off from each other. So like, I'm sure actually I'm pretty confident that even though I don't know of the specific cases, I'm pretty sure it has happened where it's like,
Well, okay, so like we'll take an example where a cult or like a group of weirdos kidnap someone and keep them as their slave in their basement or something.
yeah, so that's going to really increase the function of their system, right?
Yes, but overall, that is a bad thing because one, it's self-contradictory, so I think we could agree that we can call that incorrect. Even if
What's self-contradictory? It's in your definition of the good is to increase the function of a system, and that's what it's doing.
Yeah, but what the self-contradictory part is, so they're abiding by a rule of we can take a slave, but we're allowed to violate the freedom of this one person, but they are not allowed to have that kind of freedom for themselves. So that's contradictory. So any moral statement affirming that is going to automatically be incorrect.
But you already agreed earlier that doing something like bringing down the function of a system can be a good thing.
Yeah, so bringing down that system would be good for the victim, but for society in general, because it's enforcing a rule that is more sustainable and that increases freedom for the entire society instead of just these 4 weirdos in the woods.
I think we're kind of like getting off on a tangent that's too far on this tangent. So
Okay.
let me try to go back to the main issue. So like, say you define good as like, or not good, but just say like, to win a chess game, there's going to be objective facts about what moves you should make, right? It just sounds to me like that's what you're saying, just these descriptive things about what to do to increase the function of a system. I don't see how from that you get to that's things that we ought do. Like, yeah, you can make the descriptive claim, like you ought, descriptive ought, make this certain chess move in order to win the chess game. That doesn't mean that we ought play chess, though. That's not, you can't make the prescriptive claim that we ought play chess. That's like a normative claim.
Well, you could
say making this jump. Like, do you not think that the is-ought fallacy is a fallacy? Like, you have some special version of logic or something?
I'm trying to show that that's not the case.
So you
maybe
deny
I'm a fool
that
for. Yeah, because sorry, I'm just looking at the chat. Because in the sense, if you're saying an ought is, I would prefer that you do this, like we ought to play chess, saying I would prefer to play chess. That doesn't matter to me really, or the system that I'm the moral code that I'm talking about.
But you're saying we ought make these certain moves because they win the chess game, but then you're saying you're not claiming that we ought play chess.
Yeah, so
like the chess thing is an analogy.
If it is the case that we're playing chess, there are objective oughts to that. So you can derive an ought from an is, because X move would be the good move or the correct move.
No, but when that's not, when you say in a chess game you ought move here to win the game, that's not getting an ought from an is, because that's a descriptive term. The is ought fallacy is when you say, when you're trying to take prescriptive from the descriptive. So when you're saying that it's not just that we ought do X in order to increase the function of a system, but we ought prescriptive increase the function of a system in general. That's the problem. That's where you're making the jump that's committing the is-ought fallacy.
But so with chess, wouldn't you agree that it is descriptive? That
Yeah, it's descriptive if you say you ought make X move in order to win the game. But
okay.
what's not going to be descriptive, what's going to be prescriptive, is when you say we ought play chess by these rules.
Okay,
Something like
yeah.
humanity ought
That's
do. That's the problem.
yeah. So
So when you say
the
we ought increase the function of a system, or we ought aim for people's freedom, that's a prescriptive claim that you can't get to from descriptive
so
terms.
the thing I'm describing with good is actually a phenomenon that does exist. Increasing the freedom of the system, it does exist.
Yeah, chess games
Where
exist.
the rules of chess doesn't actually exist, though. That's just a construct that of an idea that
Just
we
like the
hold in our
rules,
minds.
just like the rules of a society.
Yeah,
I don't understand. The chess thing seems like a perfect analogy to me. Like I can point to two of the common properties between what you're saying and the chess game.
but there's no property of chessness,
There's
but
the
there is a
rules of
property.
chess. It's
What?
a system, right? There's the rules of chess, just like there's like the rules of a society, which you're saying is a system.
Yeah. So it doesn't actually matter. So as far as ethics of a society go, it doesn't matter which one you choose as long as it's not self-contradictory and it
I don't.
overall increases
What do you
freedom.
say? Jumping to ethics?
Because you're talking about the rules of society versus the rules of chess,
Yeah.
which I would say ethics
What's
this is the rules of society.
the rule? That's the definition of ethics, is the rules of a society.
I guess I mean that's how I'm using it.
So communist. I don't think you want to say that, because then communist China, by your definition, would be ethical because they have rules of a society.
Well, it's so I would say you can have bad ethics.
No, but if you're just
Um,
defining ethical as what the rules of the society are, then by that definition, the rules of the communist China would be ethical.
they have an ethical system. I would say that it's a broken ethical system.
So it's ethical. Communist China is an ethical system.
So I think this is a semantical thing where, yeah, you can say it's what they're doing is unethical, but what they have is an ethics system. So I think these are just different senses of the word. So I don't think this is
It
like
seems
I'm
like
not
you're
hanging
reading.
on the definition of ethics here. So if I just Google it, it's ethics is the moral principles that govern a person's behavior or conducting activity. So I would say you can have a broken ethical system where your ethics are unethical, if that makes sense. But yeah, I'm not sure what I think this is kind of off in the weeds. So we were talking about like, so we don't even have to use the word ethics. We can just go with the rules of society. So the rules of society being like arbitrary, like chess. Are you saying that that's the problem?
I'm not saying that the problem is that they're arbitrary. No. So it's that when you're saying like X is good because the good is what increases the function of a system, that's the same thing as saying, this X move is good in chess because it will win you the game. So you ought to do that in a descriptive sense to win the game. But the problem is when you're trying to say that we should increase the system of a system, like we should play chess. We ought play chess. That's prescriptive. So you're making a jump from the descriptive to the prescriptive. You're trying to get an ought from an is in that sense. It's not when you say we ought do this to increase the function of a system. It's when you're saying in general that we ought try to increase the function of the system.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the jump is being made. That's fallacious.
I think an ought is a tautology, because you're saying it's good to do good, which is just kind of a tautological statement.
You're just saying if the good is just to increase the function of a system, then why is that something that I should do?
Well, what does should mean? It means that's good.
Yeah, but so it's when you're saying, like, in order to increase the function of a system, we ought make the system this certain move, because that's a descriptive ought. It's when you're trying to make the jump to a prescriptive ought that's saying we ought increase the function of a system in general.
But so what if you're prescribing something? What you're saying is that it's good to do, right? Or that you prefer it.
Your definition, like you would be saying it's a good move. X is a good move in chess.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to focus on what an ought actually is. What are you saying when you say you ought to do X? Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, well, that's the problem that I have when people try to take a prescriptive meaning from it. That's why I'm a moral non-cognitivist, because I can't even wrap my head around that proposition being true or false, because it just seems like a preference. You desiring to increase the function of systems just seems like a preference to me, and preferences cannot be true or false. Preference is subjective. It's another thing that the claim that we ought increase the function of systems is subjective. What if everybody in the world said we ought not increase the function of the systems? Is it still the case that we ought to?
Yeah, I would say definitionally it would be, but that problem is kind of what I was stuck on until I tried to figure out, or until I did figure out what an ought actually means, because for the longest time I could not describe what it means. I thought it was non-cognitive to say you ought to do something. Until I figured out that you can substitute the phrase you ought to do X with it is good to do X, and it makes the same sense.
It's just not going to be informative. It's the same thing as like a theist saying the good is what God we ought do what God commands, and what God commands is good. Like, it's just not informative. It's not telling us what the good actually means.
Well, in that case, that they never actually define good, but in my case, I define good.
They're saying the good is God.
Yeah, but they're not telling us what God wants or is, or what his nature is.
Well, it's whatever they think God is commanding, just like it would be whatever you think is increasing the function of a system.
But they can never describe what actually is the principles that God is using to decide what is good or not. They just say whatever it is. So it's underdetermined, but in my estimation, or in my code, you actually have a principle regardless of who's saying it. It's not whatever X says is good. It's anything that I actually have defined good, instead of use God as a proxy. Like, I'm not using a proxy like God would be, because they would say whatever God says is good as a proxy, but they don't actually know what God is actually choosing, what principle he's using to decide whether something is good or whether something is bad. They're just waiting for God to make the decision, and then using his decision as the proxy to say, okay, that must have been good. But they can't actually describe the property that it was.
I lost you. I didn't follow what you said. Sorry.
So, like, if
I think a lot of this was us talking past each other, though.
Yeah.
But aren't we at 45 minutes? If we can wrap it up.
I think we're about 40 minutes in.
We still have 8 minutes left, but we can end early if both competitors agree to end early.
Yeah, I kind of want it to be over, but if you want to give a closing statement, that's fine. I'll forfeit my closing statement.
All right. So, yeah, I'll just explain what I was saying in different terms. Like, so the divine command theorists would say whatever God says is good because God said it. So they're not actually describing what God wants or what principle God has. They're just looking at the result and seeing God approves. So we're going to use that approval as a proxy to say whatever that was good, but they can't actually identify what property is happening that makes it good. But I do that, so I don't see that there's any analogy toward divine command and their non definition of good versus my definition of good, which I would call the English definition, because you could substitute my definition with any usage, any normal usage of the word good in any sentence. All right. And I think we covered all the talking points I wanted to.
All right, Godless, do you want any last words?
No, it's okay.
All right, Snake, can you moderate the questions and keep everyone distracted while I score you both?
Yes, everyone put in your questions. I think we only have one from Simos Funk. Cinematic brought the twins. I don't know what that means.
He's talking about my boobs, and yes, I did.
Brought the girls. All right. I think we just have that one question, and while I'm looking for more questions, people send in
He
your
just asked
questions.
me, do I think humankind has a purpose? And no, I don't.
Okay. And I think purposes are probably intentional. So I would probably agree, other than the purpose we give ourselves. And then let's go with his original question. For me, what is a moral fact and how is it justified? Well, I just explained all that, Simos. It's a fact about what increases the good or maintains the good, which is increasing or maintaining the function of the system. And how is it justified? It's justified logically. And I think basically morality is a purely logical pursuit. And so, like, you could have moral statements that are self-contradictory, so they can't be part of that. They can't be justified. But all the moral statements that are not self-contradictory are justified. And then, Godless, if you had any response to that.
Oh, sorry, I didn't. What his question?
Well, my response to his question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was like reading the chat. I didn't.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Okay.
I have ADD. I like started to fall apart at the end there.
Same. And did I show Gary Priestley's yet? Question: why are these debates always so interesting, informative, and entertaining? Because God wills it. That is why.
She's gonna give us feedback.
Yeah, she's deliberating our scores right now, I think.
I've done the math, and I need to do a little bit of more math.
You don't know how to do math?
Can you tell us what the criteria is?
Yeah, I can tell you that right now. So it's based off of the NSDA criteria for world school styles, which is
What's
content.
NSDA?
That's the competitive debate circuit for high
Oh,
school and college. Yeah.
oh.
So it's based on content, which is, hey, a stupid whore energy. Nice. So
She's
content,
always there somewhere.
I know, she's my favorite. So content is 40%, style is 40%, and strategy is 20%. So, all right, 1 second.
Okay, we have a off-topic question from Matt Apples. Love it when you own flurfs and dumpster fires. When is your next debate and something like that? I will be there. I don't have anything on the books for flat earthers yet, but I'm following up some leads and I might be able to find some in Discord. So yeah, I want to have more flat earth debates and I'll let you know.
I don't think flat earthers exist. I think they're just trolls.
I think a lot of them are, yeah. So, but the proof that there are some is that those a lot of people actually get donations and money. So someone is donating and those people believe. So
Somebody asked me a question,
Chamuko.
but it disappeared off the screen.
Oh, here it is again. Question: A Godless Girl, is the U.S. justice system worse than the one of China, or why do they have not as many people in prison while having so many more people than us in the U.S.?
Oh yeah, I don't know. I don't know about what their justice system is. I'm not informed enough to answer that. But I mean, I would
I'm
say that our justice system is like a human rights disaster. It's actually kind of almost slave labor now because they're forcing the people in prisons to do work instead of like outsource, or big companies instead of outsourcing to get cheap labor from like India and shit. They're just making people in the United States work for like 75 cents an hour or something. Like sometimes when those telemarketers call you now, it's actually somebody sitting behind bars. People just don't realize that.
I
Oh, but
agree.
I don't know if I'm not supposed to say this right now, but I didn't know you're anti-communist. I have a lot of friends that are communist Marxists, so
Yes, and like
they're
flat
really
earthers,
informed about it.
they're hard to get to debate, and I need more communists to debate. So if you know any, send them my way, and we'll get them straightened out. Um, but yeah, I agree with you on your criticisms. That was one thing our current vice president did was keep people in prison. She suppressed exonerating evidence to keep them in prison so they could have cheap labor for putting out fires or something, I think. And yeah, and it's a total disaster. All the nonviolent imprisonment we have. I could be talking out of my ass, but I think a lot of people aren't in Chinese prisons because they're executed. I'm not sure how many. I'm pretty sure they execute more in China, but I'm not really that well informed on that. So that might be contributing. And a lot of it might be just a lot more fear in the population as well. But I do agree that the U.S. has some major flaws. And I think that's the end of the questions.
All right. Are you guys ready for your feedback?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to start off with Snake. Before I even begin with individual feedback, I feel like, even though this wasn't intentional, it was an entirely definitional debate. And therefore, the question of the matter was if Snake's definitions held up or if they did not. So Snake defined objective morality as what helps a system function. And I did feel that there was no definition provided of what it is to function. And that was never discussed. at any time whatsoever. So that is kind of where I feel a bit disappointed in Snake's abilities during this debate, because you can say that it's objective to help a system function, but what does functioning actually look like within the situation? And I was impressed with Snake's point of, so one of Godless Girl's arguments was that why should I care if the system succeeds or if it does not succeed? And Snake had a really excellent comeback to this, which is the phenomenon of helping a system will exist whether or not you want it to exist. And I thought that was a really strong point. And one thing that I would have liked to see Snake see, Godless mentioned there's objective rules to playing a chess game. Why should we play chess? What I wish Snake would have said instead was, we're not outside of the chess game. We are the chess game. Because Godless Girl's analogy in this case was false. We're not, because the equivalent of being outside the chessboard would be, for example, some sort of deity, but we are chess pieces. So if Snake challenged that, then Godless Girl's analogy would not have held up. I thought that Snake was strong in pointing out the fact that a clock ought to tell time, and Godless Girl wasn't really successful in challenging this. Snake made a pretty terrible concession when Godless Girl challenged this by saying it's not absolute. Snake, you're trying to defend that it is absolute. That's your entire position. So Godless Girl brought up some interesting points about a torture system and what if that helps society function overall. And Snake made some pretty big leaps of faith that if these things are negative, they would automatically fail. And I thought that Godless Girl did an excellent job in sort of challenging sort of Snake's shorthand for freedom being the same as helping a system function. I didn't really see where you were going with that, and I didn't really feel like it really held up. Okay, let's see. Moving on. Yeah, you committed a fallacy, Snake, when you said if it was sustainable, it would exist by now. This is called the appeal to tradition fallacy, and it's not true. You also made another concession. The rules of chess don't actually exist, but our society exists, or the rules of our society exists objectively. And then you made another concession again by saying that ethics and ethical rules are not necessarily the same thing. And I feel like, Godless Girl really kind of had you when she compared you to a theist, and that was so satisfying because you know how our arguments go. But anyways, she compared you to a theist, and basically you tried to defend that I am not a theist because they have an sort of third party and mine is direct. But once again, kind of going back to the major flaw in your argument was that you never defined what functioning is. And if you could have, then I think that it would have been a bit more of a strong case. So, Godless Girl. I already gave you some feedback, but let's see what I left out. In the beginning, I think that you lacked a little bit of confidence. But
I'm sorry, my mic was muted. Can you repeat the last thing you said? I didn't hear it.
About you or about Snake?
The very 2 sentences ago, what you said about me.
I said that Snake's case would have been stronger if they were able to more accurately or more concretely define what functioning is.
I thought it was about me. Sorry.
Oh, I'm just getting to you.
I thought that was the first thing you said.
Yeah. So it's a full circle. And circles are systems, and I'm helping the circle function.
Very good.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm jumping into Godless Girl. So in the beginning, I would say that you lacked confidence, but you definitely picked it up. I think that I was really impressed when you just kind of laid out the question of why should we increase the function of a system, and I felt like that was kind of the core of your case, and I feel like honestly you won that concession. And let's see. I think that you were really strong in just challenging Snake's definitions overall throughout the entire debate, and you did so concretely and accurately. I think that you definitely were strong in challenging Snake's assumptions that a torture device wouldn't increase the functioning of a system. And I really enjoyed your comment about if we overthrow the Chinese government, are we doing something bad? Because the Chinese government is, in fact, a system. And Snake made the argument that it's bad for the government and worse for the universe. I would have liked to see Snake kind of maybe expand on that, maybe build onto sort of a formula of utilitarianism, because I think that Snake had a good reply, but they should have strengthened it a bit more. I did not like your point about the Amazon people being free and are more efficient. That actually helps Snake, because that's exactly what Snake was arguing, that freedom helps and prison hurts. So I'm not really sure where you're going with that. That kind of helped the other side.
No,
Okay.
there is no prisons in the Amazon, so they're
Yeah,
free.
and that's what Snake was kind of arguing, is that freedom is good. Okay. So then you started talking about the chess game, and Snake could have replied by saying that we are not outside of the chess game, we are in it. But
No,
Snake
wait, I'm
did-
sorry. That was totally misunderstood because he was saying that the laws are the good thing or whatever. And I was saying, well, they don't have any laws in the Amazon and they're all prancing around free. And here where we do have laws is when where everybody's in prison.
Mhm. But then you said that the Amazon is more happy or whatever. But anyways,
I didn't see that.
moving on. So you brought up the point about the chess game and that it doesn't mean you want to play chess. If I were Snake, I would have said we're in the chess game. We are the chess game. But Snake didn't say that, so you won that concession. And I think that you really got Snake into the corner when you compared them to a theist. And I have a personal stake in that because...
Bias.
Well, I didn't put that into the scoring, but you know how I felt about our free will debates and how, But anyways, it's because of the technicality, the scoring was closer than I actually felt it should be, simply because technically you didn't use your time enough. In strategy, you want to be using your introductions and your conclusions because you're getting more time on the floor and you want to be using as much time as you can. So that brought down your score technically. And also the technicality of style because there was sort of a lacking in style. But despite that, I want to say congratulations to our winner. Snake, your final score was 80. And Godless Girl, you are the first person to defeat a debate cafe host with a score of 81. So congratulations, Godless Girl, for defeating Snake Was Right. You are the victor. And I personally feel like you won by more than 1 point, but because of the technicalities, unfortunately, the scores were closer than I felt that I personally feel the debate went. I
But
personally
look at the chat.
What?
But look at the chat. I agree.
What's it say?
It says that Snake should get an extra point for their puppy.
Yeah.
We could call it a tie and we'll have a tiebreaker sometime.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
I'm actually an epistemological nihilist, so and that's like I'm really strong with epistemology. So I don't think you know anything. So we could debate that sometime, and I'll rip you apart. It'll get a lot of views on your channel too. I'll bring a lot of people over with me to watch.
Okay. And cinematic psychology agrees with me, so
That's true.
he's
I
actually biased
believe
toward
in
me.
objective morality, but for very different reasons than Snake does. So
Okay. Well, we'll have to debate.
So
Yeah.
really though, I don't mind if we can give him an extra point and call it a tie. That would make it fun, and we can do a tiebreaker sometime.
actually, it was a tie. I gave you an extra point because I had to figure out who won. So do you want to go back to calling it 80-80? If you want to.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. Congratulations. It's a tie. But really,
And I get a puppy point, so I win.
Godless Girl won. Okay.
Can't blame me for trying.
All right, I'm going to log off. Feel free to hang out. And thanks for coming on our show, Godless Girl. I really enjoyed you.
Oh yeah, somebody said in the comments, and I totally agree that I really like the feedback thing. That's really unique.
Thanks.
I want to come back on the channel more.
Awesome. All right. It was really cool to meet you. Love your energy, Godless Girl, and I would love to have you back. And bye.
All right. Yep, we're gonna wrap it up completely. And yeah, thanks for coming on, and we'll have that tiebreaker soon.
Okay, I'll talk to you soon. But good night.
All right. And we'll invite you back on to debate other people too. So.
Okay, yeah. Do you do like team debates, 2 against 2?
Yep.
Okay. All right, I'll talk
We'll
to you
do
soon.
all that. All right. See ya.
Thanks for having me on.
And thanks everyone for tuning in and supporting us. And yeah, it's free for now, but very soon we will have super chats and you must pay us. Okay. Goodbye. Good night. And we'll end on this note. And Stupid Horror Energy always contributing the best content. So thank you all and good night. Oh, wait. I forgot to use my soundboard. Thank you. Okay. And with that, we are out. And dog bless.